Oh man, heavyweight undisputed. Let's go. What's good? It's Woog. We've got Tyson Fury, 34 wins, 0 losses, 1 draw, defending his WBC heavyweight title against Oleksandr Usyk, 21 wins and 0 losses. Usyk's going to be defending his WBA, IBF, and WBO titles. This is the battle to crown the first undisputed heavyweight champion in the 4-belt era and the first undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis. Now, there was technically the IBO title at the time, so there were 4 belts, but it wasn't the WBO, IBF, WBA, WBC. And a big reason why there hasn't been an undisputed champion since Lennox Lewis is because you basically had 2 mega powers fighting at the same time, and they would never fight each other. And those 2 mega powers were Vladimir Klitschko and Vitaly Klitschko. Vitaly Klitschko often held the WBC title, and Vladimir Klitschko held the other 3 belts. But Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk, I'm getting chills. This is about to happen. Or at least I think it's about to happen. Now, this fight has been postponed due to that cut sustained by Tyson Fury in training. So this date that they are about to fight, May 18th, this was supposed to be a couple months prior. And even when they scheduled it or rescheduled it for May 18th, I was wondering if this was going to give enough time for Tyson Fury's cut to fully heal, where there's a much less or hopefully a near 0 chance of that same exact cut reopening if it gets hit cleanly. So here we are. Battle for Undisputed. This has been so long awaited. For a while we thought that the battle for Undisputed might include, Anthony Joshua or, Deontay Wilder was a longtime WBC champion, but it was Oleksandr Usyk who unexpectedly from cruiserweight stormed the gates. I remember a lot of people considering what he could do at heavyweight. I remember that the main consensus was that he would not be able to beat the big heavyweights. Like, I remember even when he was knocking off Breedis and Gassiev and Tony Bellew, the thought of him coming up to heavyweight and not only beating some of the other guys that might weigh 220, 230, but him beating Anthony Joshua twice, that was not public opinion. In fact, I think the only guy I could think of who was really saying, oh, no, Oleksandr Usyk is going to be a problem even fighting these bigger heavyweights was online boxing analyst Richard Dwyer. I remember him making that call, and in fairness, I remember him saying Tyson Fury was going to beat Vladimir Klitschko. Yes, he gets it wrong sometimes, but in these cases, I thought he was dead on. In fact, when Usyk went to heavyweight, beat Chaz Witherspoon, and then fought that fight and beat Derek Chisora in a pretty rough fight, and in a pretty competitive fight, even on the scorecards, competitive fight, Oleksandr Usyk going into the fight with Anthony Joshua was a significant betting underdog. He was at least a 3-1 underdog going into that first fight with AJ. But man, Tyson Fury versus Usyk, again, neither of these guys know how to lose. Both undefeated, both had very different paths to getting where we are right now. Tyson Fury, a career heavyweight. He's a super big heavyweight. I mean, I remember once upon a time to get anybody near Tyson Fury's height, it would be guys like Lance Goofy Whitaker. I don't know how many of you guys remember Lance Goofy Whitaker, but it was an anomaly to have somebody 6'7" or above. Tyson Fury was listed at 6'9". And working up the ranks, he had a reputation of being a skilled boxer at that height. So he was fighting better and better guys. And then he got his shot against Vladimir Klitschko, where he, pretty much shocked the boxing world to a degree. I mean, Tyson Fury was a significant betting underdog in that one. He was like a plus 350, 3.5 to 1 underdog. Vladimir Klitschko was like a minus 500, so a 5 to 1 favorite. And Fury just flat out outboxed Vladimir Klitschko, took the titles, ended up singing Aerosmith's Don't Want to Miss a Thing in the ring after the win, and then he disappeared from the sport for 3 years. He was famously overweight, he was battling depression, substance abuse, well-documented mental health issues, comes back to the ring about 3 years later, fights a couple of tune-ups, then he fights Deontay Wilder, who at the time was a slight betting favorite against Tyson Fury, and that was the fight that resulted in a draw where Tyson Fury was seen to have won majority of the early to middle rounds. Deontay Wilder dropped him twice, the second knockdown being the famous knockdown where Fury was flat on the ground looking up at the lights and then gets up. Like he's motionless until about 4 or 5, and then he starts making a move to get up. You know, you could argue whether it was a regular count, slow count. The fact is, it was a count, and that was an important aspect. I remember Paulie Malignaggi mentioning on the broadcast, props to Jack Reese for starting a count and not just waving the fight off, because you see a lot of knockouts that result because the guy hits the canvas in the way that Fury hit the canvas, where they're just laying on their back motionless, and then the ref doesn't even start a count. Jack Reese went 1, 2, 3, gave Fury the opportunity to get up. Fury barely beat the count. The fight continued, and this ended up resulting in a draw. They ran it back, and in that second fight, that might have been the scariest version of Tyson Fury I think I've ever seen. He ended up stopping Deontay Wilder. Not only did he stop him, but he beat him up really badly on the way to the stoppage, ended up TKOing him in the 7th round. And then they had the trilogy fight about a year and a half later, because it was that early COVID disruption of boxing that caused that wide gap between the second and the third fight, over a year and a half in between those fights. Well, in the trilogy fight, Fury scored another knockout. This one was in the 11th round, competitive fight. Fury got dropped twice in that fight. So he got dropped twice in their first fight, dropped twice in their third fight, but he came out victorious in the second and third fight after fighting to a draw in the first fight. So Fury's fights after that were the knockout win, 6th-round knockout of Dillian Whyte, the 10th round stoppage of Derek Chisora, and then the fight against Francis Ngannou. And it was that performance against Ngannou who dropped Fury in the 3rd round, and the fight resulted in a split decision. Could go either way. This was a very close fight that Tyson Fury won via split decision. This was Francis Ngannou's boxing debut, and it was that just puzzling performance from Tyson Fury that has swung public opinion over to the side of Usyk, making him, or at least for a significant amount of time, the slight betting favorite. Before that, Fury was the betting favorite, but after that performance against Ngannou, where Fury not only got dropped, but the 1st and 2nd round were competitive, and after the knockdown, Fury still seemed like he didn't quite have things figured out. He never really seized control of that fight, even after the knockdown. You would have thought that after getting dropped, he would be like, okay, we're taking this seriously now. Now I'm going to do the different things technique-wise, strategy-wise, tactic-wise to seize control over this novice and show him who the real boxer is. We never really got that moment in Fury versus Ngannou. So the betting odds, again, swung towards Usyk, making him the slight betting favorite. But right now, as it stands, Fury is once again the very, very slight betting favorite. Now we've got Fury at a -110 and Usyk at a +100. That's about as even as you could get in these super elite high profile fights. This is basically a pick'em according to the boxing betting odds. And with Oleksandr Usyk, very different path again to getting to where we are right now. He pretty much took a longer road to fame, and this is after becoming the 2012 Olympic gold medalist in the heavyweight division, and that was in the London Games. So the same games where Anthony Joshua won it at super heavyweight, Usyk won it at heavyweight. And Usyk, a southpaw, pretty much step by step ran through the cruiserweight division. Cruiserweight is one of the least heralded and least recognized, at least in the United States, least recognized divisions in all of boxing. It's because it's that little in-between division between light heavyweight that usually has a lot of notable fighters, or at least more than cruiserweight, and then obviously heavyweight. So Usyk, he's fighting, better and better, gradually better fighters, beats Krzysztof Glowacki. He was the first to beat Glowacki. He was the first and only to beat Michael Hunter. He was then the first to beat Maris Briedis, the first to beat Murat Gassiev. And you're bad if you're taking away that many O's in the loss column. Again, Maris Briedis, Michael Hunter, Krzysztof Glowacki, and Murat Gassiev. And Usyk won the World Boxing Super Series, became undisputed in the division, winning all 4 belts. And it wasn't one of those undisputeds where you get like 3 belts from one guy or 4 belts from one guy. You know what I mean? He was getting belt. He was just beating these guys one by one, picking them off. And on the way out of the cruiserweight division, he knocks out Tony Bellew in the 8th round. And then at heavyweight, he fights Chaz Witherspoon, Derek Chisora. Then he's got those fights with Anthony Joshua. And that was the moment that Usyk goes from being an all-time great cruiserweight, where it's pretty much a 2-man race in terms of who's the greatest cruiserweight of all time. It's either Usyk or Evander Holyfield. I don't know who else enters that discussion, but it goes from that to being a historical figure, because now you've captured 3 of the heavyweight belts after becoming undisputed at cruiserweight. So recently we've had the first 2 males becoming undisputed in 2 different divisions. Terrence Crawford and Nadia Inoue. Clarissa Shields did it on the women's side. So Oleksandr Usyk in this fight against Tyson Fury has a chance at becoming undisputed at cruiserweight and now undisputed at heavyweight. The stakes are high, as De La Soul once said in 1996, but Usyk did have one more fight after those 2 fights against AJ, and those fights against AJ were unanimous decision win for Usyk and a split decision win for Oleksandr Usyk. That second fight, by the way, was an excellent fight. Go rewatch that one. And then Usyk fights Daniel Dubois, where Usyk's outboxing Dubois, but Dubois, he's staying in it. He's starting to go to the body. And this is something that's going to resurface as I discuss this Fury versus Usyk showdown. But Dubois' work to the body eventually dropped Oleksandr Usyk. There was a controversial hit, and it was right along the belt line, it seemed, and it's still controversial. Was it above or below the belly button? Was it too low? Was it in that little soft spot below your belly but above your groin area, where it's very fleshy, there's not a lot of bone or a lot of muscle right there? It's a tender area. I don't know, but they ruled it a low blow, giving Usyk a lot of time to recover. And he was in bad shape when he went down. Now, a lot of people think that Dubois would have been the champion if they ruled that a knockdown, like a legitimate knockdown. But I really think that Usyk would have had enough heart and would have recognized the situation. He would have seen the ref counting. He would have known that the ref didn't give him time to recover. And I think that Usyk would have beaten the 10 count. Now, how he would have done after that, who knows? But even that knockdown or non-knockdown aside, there were other shots to the body from Dubois that were clearly causing issues for Usyk, where he was looking over to the ref like, hey, you gonna do something about this? And a couple of those shots looked legitimate. They looked legal. And so Usyk, again, was struggling in that regard, but then he started to outbox, started to pour on the offense against Dubois. Dubois started to tire, and Dubois got knocked down a couple of times, ended up getting knocked out. It was a different knee than the one Dubois took against Joe Joyce, which was the eye-related one, but it was another knee where it's not like he was knocked down on his back and his legs wouldn't allow him to get up. It was one of those, I think I've had enough and I'm not interested in continuing with this fight type of knockout, which, that added to a lot of the, hey, is he a quitter about Dubois going into that fight against Jarrell Big Baby Miller, where Dubois won the fight and he stopped Miller in the final round. But Usyk pretty much did that to Daniel Dubois. So look, as I'm looking at Tyson Fury versus Oleksandr Usyk, Tyson Fury, one of the reputations or one of the theories about Fury is that he has difficulty with some of the smaller heavyweights. Like if you look at Otto Wallin and the success that he had in the early rounds, going to Fury's body, opening up the cut to Fury's eye. And then if you think, Steve S.S. Cunningham dropped Tyson Fury before Fury started employing some roughhouse, borderline illegal tactics to then regain control of the fight, ended up stopping Cunningham. And, we've seen Fury roughhouse in that rematch and in the third fight against Deontay Wilder. This has been like a resurfacing thing with Tyson Fury strategy wise. But there's the idea that he struggles with some of the smaller heavyweights. Well, if you don't like the smaller tacticians, you ain't gonna like fighting Oleksandr Usyk, who is about as skilled as they come. And again, he's a southpaw. Now, Fury has been known to switch to southpaw, but he is not a natural southpaw. I mean, we saw him switching stances several times against Francis Ngannou. Again, he never really figured that one out. Now against Usyk, Fury isn't going to have to worry about the one punch concussive knockout power as much. But also, I do think that Fury underestimated Francis Ngannou. I know he said that he trained for 3 months, but there's just no way that Fury, and if you look at his body type compared to what he's looking like, at least in some pictures in this training camp for Usyk, Fury, if he didn't undertrain, then I think that he underestimated, at least in his own mind, what threat Ngannou realistically posed against him. So if it wasn't like a physical undertraining, I think that it was a mental sliding of Francis Ngannou. I don't think that he had the same fear. Now, boxers talk about the fear that motivates them to perform the way that they perform, and to get them at their absolute best, to properly prepare them. They mention fear. Now, Fury has this ability to perform at his absolute best when the lights are at their absolute brightest and when the moment is at its biggest, when it matters the most. You see what he did when he fought Vladimir Klitschko as a betting underdog. You see what he did in the trilogy against Deontay Wilder, especially in those first 2 fights. I know that the first one was scored a draw, but he was only 2 tune-up fights back into his career after being out of the ring for 3 years. You know what I mean? That was a very big and impressive performance for Fury to do what he did after such a layoff. So Fury tends to meet the moment when the moment matters most. So I think that going into this fight with Usyk, there is that fear and that respect level that's going to get Fury to be motivated to be at his absolute best. I think Fury is scared, not necessarily scared of Usyk, but I think that he's scared of what it does to his legacy if he loses to Usyk. If he loses to the middleweight, as he likes to call him, right? He likes to tease him about his, relative lack of size compared to Fury, right? Because Fury's about 6'8", 6'9". Usyk's about 6'3", really 6'2", 6'3". I think Fury is personally terrified of losing to Usyk. So I think that he is going to do everything he can in his power to pretty much cap off his legacy by becoming undisputed and by beating Oleksandr Usyk. On the other hand, Usyk is now 37 years old. Fury's 35, and Fury, he's been fighting a long time. Like, Fury turned pro, like, I think around 2008. So Fury's had 35 pro fights. Usyk has only had 21 professional fights. He turned pro a bit later. But Usyk is 37 years old, and you look at his style, it is so legs intensive. You know what I mean? Like, watch the first round or the first 2 rounds of Usyk, or should I say AJ versus Usyk 1, and look at Usyk's legs against, Murat Gassiev and against Maris Briedis, even against Tony Bellew. Look at how much movement there is, how much changing of angles, changing of levels, how much kind of dip it over to the side as you're moving your legs. Again, if you want a recent example of this, AJ versus Usyk 1, the first round and the first 2 rounds, look at Usyk's feet. Look at what he's doing to AJ's jab. Look at how he's managing range. Look at how much is going on when he's slipping punches, getting in range, getting opportunities to shoot like a short left hand in there while having a very active lead right hand. That's another thing. I think that Fury versus Usyk is going to be like a feint fest, especially in the first couple of rounds. I think Fury's going to get back into his blinking, like basically the way that he fought the early rounds against Vladimir Klitschko, and largely how he fought some of those early rounds against Deontay Wilder in their first fight. I think he's going to have a mixture of that, where he's feinting a lot, getting his jab in, because look, if the jab battle is even competitive, then that is bad news for Usyk. A lot of people think that there's going to be a huge coordination gap. Like, I've been, back and forth with my dad on this one. I'll tell you who I think is going to win, but my dad thinks that Oleksandr Usyk is going to win because of that coordination gap. I think my brother and my cousin both think that Fury is going to win, largely because of the size and feeling like he's going to impose his physicality on Usyk in the way that he did against Derek Chisora in their second of 3 fights, and in the way that he did against Wilder in the second and third fight, and in the way that he did against like Steve Cunningham, and in the way that he did against Otto Wallin after the cut opened up and he changed the distance of the fight. I do think that there is going to be a mix of that version of Fury, and again, the kind of stand at range and do a lot of feinting to then get inside type of Tyson Fury. Now, Tyson Fury has learned to sit on his right hand in a different way, and against a southpaw like Usyk, I think that the right hand is really going to come in handy. Now, Usyk he's elusive, but he's not invincible. Even if you watch Usyk's fight against Anthony Joshua, and I'm talking about the second one now, look at how Joshua is boxing nearly evenly in the first 3 to 4 rounds against Usyk. AJ is like changing levels. He's staying lower. He's jabbing more. He's responding, as Chris Algieri was saying on the broadcast. He's responding to every time Usyk starts letting his hands go. AJ will respond with a right hand to the body, or a jab, or a right hand, whether he hits or misses, but something. He's going to throw something every time Usyk is letting his hands go. There's always a response. I think that Fury is going to do something similar. I don't think that Usyk is going to get away with a lot of unchecked punches where Usyk comes in, say he gets his, right hand going, his lead hand going, he starts probing, he starts turning that little pawing, right hand jab into a quick, short right hook. Well, I think Fury's gonna throw a right hand to the body and then walk in. I think that Fury's gonna try to clinch in a lot of different instances in the first half of the fight. Start putting that 270 plus pounds, because look, even if Fury is in, better shape, well, what I mean by better shape is weighing a little bit less than he did, even though he was effective against Wilder, but weighing more like 270 to 275 rather than 280 plus. I think that he's going to be closer to 270 in this one, but even if he's 270 and not 280, that's the thing about the heavyweight division. You've got like tiers of weights. You've got like the cruiserweights turn heavy, like Usyk, who's probably going to be like 220, 225 on the high side. And then you've got, guys who are like 245. Think Anthony Joshua. And then you've got the big bigs like Tyson Fury, who again, 270 plus pounds. It almost seems like it's an unfair fight when you consider that there's going to be like a minimum 40-pound difference between these guys, or as much as like 50 pounds between these guys. Don't underestimate what that means for Usyk's legs in the second half of this fight. So even if there is a coordination gap, I don't think it's going to be so pronounced that Fury's just going to look like a lumbering oaf against Usyk. No, I think that he's going to have his moments where he hits Usyk with a jab, where he throws a right hand and connects with Usyk, where he goes to Usyk's body, where he makes Usyk miss. Again, watch the first few rounds of Usyk versus Anthony Joshua 2. The coordination gap, it's there. It's definitely there. And you can see Usyk taking angles and doing little things, shooting like a nice up jab. You know what I mean? He throws a really nice up jab. But it wasn't so pronounced to where AJ looked like he was out of his league. This second fight was a very competitive fight where Usyk had to step on the gas late to win the fight. Again, split decision in that second fight against AJ. And that fight was in August of 2022. That's over like a year and a half ago. We're in 2024, May. So Usyk, again, is 37 years old. Fury's going to be outweighing him by about 50 pounds, as good as Usyk is. And look, I'm going to break the fourth wall a little bit here. Personally, I'm kind of pulling for Usyk just because in a lot of these fights, I look to be inspired. I look to see something, I look to see the unthinkable happen, basically. And I know, like, Usyk winning a fight, unthinkable? No, I get it. Like, he's very much in this fight. On paper, he's in this fight. But just the idea that this guy is fighting somebody like 40 to 50 pounds bigger than him and younger than him, and that's not even to talk about the backdrop of what's happening between Russia and Ukraine right now. But in my mind, Usyk is the underdog. Even if the odds are even, I see Usyk, personally, I view Usyk as being the underdog. And usually, not all the time, but often I will pull for the underdog in a lot of these cases because I want to feel inspired by what I see in the ring. You know what I mean? And that's nothing, that's no dislike for Tyson Fury. I'm just saying what would totally blow my mind would be Usyk beating Fury. But I got to be real with you. the more I think about how this fight is likely to play out, and even with the coordination gap and with Usyk's reputation of being as high IQ as you could get, Fury's got extremely high IQ as well. Again, I don't know what happened with him and Francis Ngannou, but I think that him and his team and Sugar Hill, they are preparing a game plan that I think is going to be very effective against Usyk. I think, again, it's going to be a mixture of this feint heavy game and shooting a lot of right hands to the body and up top, mixing it up, looking low, going high, and not letting Usyk lead the dance. I don't think Fury's going to be reactive and letting Usyk start doing his movement, start moving laterally, start getting his active lead hand going, start looking to pick him off with those weirdly angled left hands. I don't think he's going to let Usyk do all that. I think he's going to respect the spacing in the early, rounds, but I think that at a point he's going to start walking Usyk down. He's going to start feinting and getting his jab going, starting to get his rhythm going, because look for rhythm in this fight. Look to see which of these guys is able to more closely resemble their prototypical rhythm. I think that rhythm is going to play a huge part of this fight, but I think that as the boxing match becomes more of a fight and this starts to become a little bit muddier, I think that Fury is going to start walking Usyk down more, start weighing on him more, start putting his body on him more, and I think that that's going to eventually get to Usyk. I think it's going to slow him down. I think Usyk's going to fight a super spirited fight. I think that this fight might include a knockdown, and if there is a knockdown, I actually think it's going to be Fury knocking Usyk down as Usyk fatigues, maybe as Usyk starts to circle out. Say Fury has him up against the ropes and is leaning on him and kind of punching on him, then Usyk circles out, and then Fury catches Usyk with something as he circles out that Usyk doesn't see. I can see Usyk getting dropped by something like that, but I think that this is going to be a very competitive fight. I just think that Fury is going to do more to control, as Teddy Atlas likes to put it, the real estate of the fight. And I think that he's going to start backing Usyk up more, into the corners more, and into the rope more. I think he's going to clinch. I think he's going to weigh on him. I think he's going to be letting his free hand go as they do clinch. I think he's going to make this rugged. It's going to be a combination of elegance and ruggedness. I think that you will have both. I think Usyk's going to have some very good moments, and he's going to hit Fury with shots that get Fury to blink and to nod and to acknowledge, yeah, good one. I think Usyk is going to have those moments. I think he's going to mix it up probably to Fury's body as well, resembling a little bit of what Otto Wallin was doing. And don't get me wrong, Otto Wallin is no Oleksandr Usyk. So look, Usyk's got a real shot in this one. I just think that it's going to be Tyson Fury who beats up on Usyk just a little bit more over the span of more rounds, more consistently, and I think that he's going to pull off a very close decision win. I don't think either of these guys are getting stopped. There is so much pride in this fight. There is so much skill in this fight. There's so much survival instinct. There is so much experience between these guys. I don't think that either of these guys is going to get stopped here. I think that Fury is going to do enough to edge a decision win over Oleksandr Usyk. Split decision, majority decision, or a very close unanimous decision, but it's going to be something that's resembling 115, 113, somewhere in that ballpark. But I'm going to go with Fury to pull off a narrow win against Oleksandr Usyk. But yeah, let me know your thoughts on this one. Do you see the feint fest ensuing between these guys, between their probing hands and their level changing and Fury's style of kind of blink feinting and doing a lot of that? And I used to think that he looked a little bit like the Mike Tyson punch-out fighter Soda Popinski, but with the bald bull type of the way that his posture, basically, in the way that he was fighting Vladimir Klitschko and Deontay Wilder in their first fight. But yeah, I'm going Tyson Fury over Oleksandr Usyk via close decision. Let me know what you think. By the way, what if this results in a draw? I think that that's possible as well, where no belts exchange hands and they walk away from this fight with the same belts that they came into this fight with. In that case, I could really see them running it back because there is a rematch clause here. But if one person beats the other person pretty convincingly, I could see a case where they don't run it back because the losing fighter doesn't activate the rematch clause. Like if there's a bad knockout or a bad beating or something really one-sided, like if Fury just imposes his size and kind of has his way with Usyk, I could see this just being a 1-of-1 and that's it. But if it's a draw, yeah, I think they're going to run it back because I feel like the battle for Undisputed has to resolve with a winner, and it might not in this case. I think it's going to be a really close fight. I just think that it's going to be Tyson Fury that's awarded the decision win. Let me know your thoughts on this one in the comments. Who do you have winning this fight and how? And what do you think will result of the result here? Like, what will be the path forward? Are they gonna run it back? And what kind of fight do you see playing out? What attributes of Fury or what parts of his game plan do you think will be effective? What parts of Usyk's game plan do you think will be effective? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.